Hi friends, welcome back to the channel or the podcast or wherever you're watching. This week I wanted to talk about my trip to Chicago. It was a 24-hour trip, super fast, and I centered it around one event which I love doing, and that was seeing Ocean Vuong in person, one of my favorite authors, and going to his book event where he discussed his new book, his new novel called The Emperor of Gladness. So I wanted to share a little bit about that and what I did. And then at the end, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the creative practice and kind of like what I've been going through if you're interested in learning about that. So last week, it was the weekend before Memorial Day. I took off Thursday to Friday because that's when the event was. And then I had a nice long weekend when I got back, which was perfect. So 5 days off was fantastic. I took a half day actually on Thursday. So I went to the office. It was a really busy day at the office. And then I drove myself to the MSP airport. So I guess I can break this down budget wise too, if that is interesting, because I always appreciate it when people talk about how much things cost, especially if you follow travelers who seem like they are booking a trip constantly. You're like, how are you doing that? So okay, I'll start with the flight. So I got the flight for $40 through credit card points. So I used the Chase Sapphire card. I signed up for it, I think last summer. And I've heard it's one of the best travel cards, and so far it's been really great. So I booked it right through the travel portal through their app. I think with the time that I wanted to go, there was just one that I needed to pay $40. So I was like, okay, no problem. The only drawbacks were I flew out of Terminal 2, I think it is, through Sun Country, and then my returning flight was through Delta, and that's at Terminal 1, I want to say, in Minneapolis. It was only a drawback because I decided to park my car at the airport. So getting there was so easy. I parked at Terminal 2 and then went right in. When I came back, however, I had to take the shuttle, which it was fine. It just was a little confusing of like how to get there, like get out of the airport. It's not like you exit where the baggage claim is. You can exit within the terminal to get to the shuttle. I just had never done it before. So at 10:30 at night, it's kind of the last thing you want to be doing is like getting yourself through an airport and you just want to get home. But it was really worth it to not have to bother like a friend or family to pick me up. And honestly, since it was such a busy day at work on Thursday, I kind of didn't have time to bring my car home, then have someone come pick me up. And then it would be too expensive or more expensive to get a lift to the airport and back. So for just $40, I would say it was still a good deal. So right there, we're talking $80 for the flight and parking or transit to the airport. Then I land in Chicago. The flight was a little delayed, so I hoped to take even the train if it worked out, but the time was just cutting way too close. And as we were waiting to deplane, that honestly took the longest time. So we were waiting forever. We finally got off, and then I felt like it took like 10 to 12 minutes to like walk through the airport to get outside. Also, I think there's been a change in the Lyft app where I started to call the car because I'm like, this can take a while sometimes. But I also didn't know how long it would take me to get out to the curbside pickup. So what they have you do now is they're like, great, we're booking you a ride. Let us know when you're at this location. And there's like actual directions of how to get through the airport and get to the designated area at O'Hare to get to the ride share. So it's gotten so prevalent now, like over the years. I mean, obviously Uber and Lyft have been around for like over 10 years now. So it makes sense that they have like a system. So I just never seen it like that getting out of an airport, but maybe I usually call it right from the curb too. So regardless, that's how that all went. Got into my Lyft, and he was such a fast driver, which was good. It made me a tiny bit nervous, but I was like, yes, I am late for this event, which was the whole reason why I flew here. So I wanted to take either a Lyft or the transit to get to the event. I already scoped out like this health food restaurant that looked really good. It had like salads and wraps and sandwiches nearby near the theater. But as it was, I was barely getting there on time. So also a note, if you have migraines like I do or are diabetic, I'm sure you have this down pat, but like I packed a lot of snacks with me and I used every single one of them just because I can get headaches if I don't eat like right when I'm hungry pretty much. So that came in clutch because sometimes that's just how travel goes, where you just like have to keep yourself moving to the next thing because your plan may not work out, where it's like I didn't even have time to grab something on my way out of the airport, so it's good to be prepared for things like that. I got to the event space and was like way in the back, but I was in the center and could hear everything totally fine, obviously. And just to be in the same room with Ocean and all the people, it was like so fun. I will say there was a joke that he was making about bottoms and comparing his novel to his poetry. And he's like, the novel can take it. Basically, like the poetry can be in the novel, but the novel can't be in the poetry. And it was just so funny to see like who were the people kind of keyed into like queer culture and who were not. Like the couple next to me were definitely confused. So it just felt like a little inside joke, I guess. And it's just a really funny analogy. But yeah, it was like so profound and really inspiring as an artist to just, for me to keep going, keep creating. And he was very dismissive about the book too, which I've heard many artists be like that, where it's like you just need to be, not hold on to anything too preciously, if that's a word, so that you don't get too attached to the work. So I think it's really vital so that you can keep creating, to not sit on anything and be like, oh, this is my best work ever, because you don't know. I think he said Anne Lamont, he liked and knew, said that she is done writing or done publishing books. And someone in an interview with her was saying like, how can you say that? Are you sure? And she's just basically like, yeah, I wanted to get to a point in my life where I could enjoy life and not have to turn it into something. And I was like, wow, that is the goal, isn't it? Because I feel like as a content creator or just a maker, I always question, like, should I be turning into, like, should I sell my photography in prints, or should I make a photo book, or should I sell my photography services, which I tried for a bit. And even just as workers, we turn our time into money. So it's a very like luxurious way to think, but I think it's a really cool goal as well, to just feel like I can rest now. I can, not feel like I have to generate all the time. I wonder how she'll feel like maybe in a year or so from now, when it's like, because like if you are a maker, that is just like what we do. So the show is great. I think those were kind of the highlights. I wrote down a couple things. He said, let me see. He said that he's like, being an American is being trapped in a free country. I was like, oh yes. Oh yes. One thing he said about not signing a contract, like a multi-book contract, which he would get more money for, but he's like, I'm not in the business of selling ghosts. Like literally everything he says is just like a poem itself. And he's like, about being dismissive about the book, he's like, you can throw glitter at this, you can throw tomatoes at it, like I'm unbothered basically. So after that, I went to the place across the street to get dinner. It was like 9ish or so. And then I took a Lyft to my coworker Kelly's house. She was an old coworker I knew, and So she had offered for me to stay with her and her boyfriend if I ever wanted to come to Chicago. And so I took her up on that, which was a stipulation for myself. I was like, you cannot go on this trip unless you ask her if you can stay, just because I really needed to make this trip as budget friendly as possible. Another thing I did packing wise was I brought a little plant that I grew from one of my plants, and I was like, oh my gosh, I will give her this as like a little gift. But it's just so funny to think about that like this plant has journeyed from the car to my work to a plane to another car to a artist talk and then to another car and then to her house. So I was like, she will perk up tomorrow. Like, just give her a second. She's been in a bag all day. So it was super sweet to meet her in person. She's so nice. Her boyfriend was so nice and welcoming, and I just so appreciated them having me. It was just like the perfect amount of time because, you know, we weren't like the closest of friends and we haven't kept in touch a ton, but it was nice to catch up for the evening. And then in the morning, I just got ready and left right when they started work at 8. So it was perfect. So thank you again, Kelly. So since I left quite early in the day, I did some touring around Wicker Park, which was a nearby neighborhood. At first, I went to the post office to mail myself the book that I got from Ocean Vuong's event because the book was so thick and heavy, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that the ticket included the book. So I went to the post office, and by the way, if you don't know about this, you can mail books for, I think it's a little bit cheaper than normal, than the same amount of weight in an envelope. If it's like a book, you just say, I'd like to mail this via media mail. And so it was like $6. I bought an envelope to put it in and paid for the shipping, and it came like 3 days later. So it was like perfect. And then I guess I'll go through my packing list quick. I just brought a backpack. So it was like a true backpack experience. And then I brought just like, you know, migraine medication, minimal toiletries, very minimal makeup supplies, toothbrush, deodorant. And then I just brought pajamas and then a change of like the first layer shirt. So Chicago was a little bit chilly. I knew it was like a little bit colder that week. So like 60s to maybe 70s, but mostly like lower 60s. So I knew it was a little chilly. And so I wore like my pea coat the whole time. And I wore a short sleeve shirt there, and then I brought a like long sleeve, like very thin layer, and then a plaid shirt over that. So I had 3 layers on total, and all like pretty much I could have taken off the middle one if it was like too warm, but I ended up keeping like all the layers on. So I feel like I packed really well. And then just pajamas were like very light, easy to carry pajamas, change of socks and underwear, and I brought my film camera because I knew I wanted to be taking a lot of film photos, and then I brought a sketchbook to like sketch as many times as I could. And that's been like a new goal that I'm trying to do wherever I travel, and I'm going to try to do it locally too, just around the neighborhood. So even with all that, like it doesn't seem like a lot, but it was just like, it was a load, you know? And I'm like, man, how can I make this even lighter? I didn't even bring a book. But what I did bring was my New York magazine. And that's been like a perfect travel thing. Like I love traveling with magazines because you're sitting and standing like at various times, and it's just enough time to like get into an article or something. So highly recommend that. And it's also like a little indulgent thing to add on when you're at the airport too. So my plan for the Friday, like my first kind of full day or only full day in the city, was to start off in the neighborhood near my friend and then go downtown. I kind of wish I had reversed that order just because a lot of places in the nearby neighborhood weren't open until like 11 or 12. And I did expect to leave her place a little bit later in the day too, maybe like 9 or 10. But since they were starting work, I kind of wanted to like just head out and start my day. So I think next time I would just like keep that in mind, maybe check the times a little bit more. But overall, it was fine. I went to a coffee shop to get a latte and do a sketch there. And then I just did some window shopping at a few bookstores, which I wouldn't have been able to get anything anyway, so it worked out. And then by the time I got downtown, I went to this one bookstore called Exile in Bookville, and that was super cute. That was open, and I've been doing this thing lately when I go to bookstores is I buy a sticker, because if I can't buy a book every time, which, you know, they're expensive, and I try to buy a book like maybe every quarter because I do use the library quite a bit. But I love going into bookstores to like get new recommendations and see kind of like what's out currently. And so buying a sticker has been my little donation or my little kind of admission ticket to the experience, because I want to support, and it may not be much, but I guess it's just my way of being able to be like, here's $5 for, you know, this experience that I had. So I got a little sticker there. But the places I went to in Wicker Park were Stan's Donuts, that came highly recommended by my friend, and things I'd seen online. Quimby's bookstore and Myopic Books were popular bookstores I had known about, so I'll have to revisit those because they weren't open yet. And then I went to a Barnes & Noble that was like, used to be in an old, I want to say, Walgreens. And then before that, it may have been a bank. It looked really fancy. It looked like it was giving bank architecture. So, but I really did like Wicker Park, and it was a perfect place to kind of wander and take photos. And then I got on the train and went downtown. I went to Goddess and Grocer for lunch. It was a great salad place. I got a tuna salad with toast, and I think it came with kind of like a cucumber salad, super light and refreshing. I do like to eat more fresh foods when I travel if I can. A lot of fried food or processed food gives me migraines, but I also just feel like lighter. And when you travel, you tend to like eat more closely together anyway. Like I feel like I'm always on an adrenaline rush when I'm traveling, and I never really notice when I get hungry. Like I definitely get hungry, but the periods of time like are longer. But I also know my body, and that it needs to eat like every 3 hours. So that is my method for that. From there, I went to a bookstore and then walked along Michigan Avenue next to the art museum, which, by the way, I was thinking about going to the art museum, but guess how much it was? It was like $70 for admission. I was like really shocked, because in New York, like no art museums are that expensive. And maybe because so many people go there that they can make the money at a lower price point. I don't know, but I wanted to see the Frida Kahlo exhibit in Chicago, and it just was just a tiny bit beyond my budget this time. So maybe next time. But then I went to the Bean and did another sketch there. And then I want to say I went to this like community center or like cultural center of Chicago, and it was kind of like an art exhibit, and then saw a few art installations there. And then I walked to Intelligentsia Coffee to get a matcha for like a little boost of energy for the rest of the day. At this city center though, I like passed by this girl, and I think this happened to me a couple times with someone else, and it's just so funny when you pass somebody and you make eye contact with them, and then you look away, and then you look back because you're like, oh, they were so beautiful, or whatever, they catch your eye, and then they're still looking at you too. So that happened, and I'm like, oh man, I should say something. But I love that. I think that's what I miss so much about just traveling or just being in a transient place, is just like those little connections, which when you're traveling, that's when things are like heightened more. You're like noticing everything, you know? So that's always fun. And then I walked to the ferry to go on the architecture riverboat tour. And just because like when I was on Viator, that seemed to be like the most, the thing to do. Like for a while I was like, oh, I must do like a biking tour in every city. But now I've just been kind of noticing like what pops up first in the location. So for example, Oaxaca, it was kind of either between like these, I want to say pyramids, I think, either that or the petrified waterfall. And I did that. There was a bike tour when I could have gone, but it was like way too hot for that. So I digress. But the architecture tour was beautiful. I knew I wanted to fit in a tour just to get like an overview, a little history, a little bit of, sightseeing and stuff. So that's always worth it. I learned that Wrigley's gum started there. I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. I was a tiny bit tired at this point just because it was an early morning and, all day walking just does add up. But I feel like I got an overview. Like Chicago felt like to me how Philly felt like. It was just a perfect day trip from New York to kind of go and like see what you can see, in a short period of time. It's like, yes, there's always more to do, but I didn't feel like I needed to like spend a whole weekend. And I feel like it'll always be there. So, I'll be back. I think those are the high points. I love centering a trip around an event. It just feels like so ephemeral and kind of puts the time frame on your experience and like gives you this limited amount of time. Like how much can I fit in before, I got to go back. So, and then I guess to get back to budgeting, so lodging was free and then I paid for 3 meals. I picked up a sandwich on the way back to the airport so I didn't have to pay for airport food, the tour, and then the book event. So I think the total is probably, 240 plus 80, 40, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think the total was probably like $320, which isn't bad, like for a quick trip. It really wasn't bad at all. So yeah, let me know if you've ever done that. If you've ever had a 24 hours in Chicago, it's like, yeah, my favorite thing to do. And then I guess I just wanted to share a little bit about creativity and about this podcast. I don't know if you've experienced this or if it's a neurodivergent thing. I don't know if I am. I don't think so. But so like a few days ago, Taylor Swift announced that she's not going to re-record her Reputation album. And people were like, there's a lot of speculation that she's neurodivergent. And they're like, how neurodivergent is she to say she'll like obsess about something and say she'll do it and then like it's like never mind. So I don't know. I feel like I was doing that with the podcast where I'm like obsessing over this and I like started branding. I set up email accounts and Instagram accounts and TikTok accounts and I'm like, this is how I'm going to distribute it and this is what the branding color is going to be and the logo and font and all this stuff, like just obsessing. And finally one day I was like, okay, you need to actually do this. But that's the scary part, right? And it reminds me of Ira Glass and this quote that is kind of famous by him where he's like, something inspires you to get started on this type of work. But when you start, it's like so far from what you had in your mind and you're like so underwhelmed by it. You're like, oh, okay, and so like the gap, he says, you need to do a bunch of work to fill the gap between where you are, where you started, and where you want to end up. And that is just like so daunting. And I always have like kind of years ahead of myself, like in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's going to take like 5 years, but maybe it won't. Maybe it'll just take 1 or 6 months or whatever. Like the important thing is that you do it. And so I finally was like, okay, just freaking start this thing. And so I did. And then as soon as I did the first episode, I was like, I'm done. I think I'm good. And so I kind of like forced myself to record this tonight because the other thing is that I was thinking of is too, was, what if I like run out of ideas? Or the perfectionist in me is like, okay, well, all these other outlets have kind of done what I want to do, and they're probably doing it better because they've been doing it for so long, and they don't really need me. And just like all this doubt, and like the energy, just, it felt like the plug was pulled on the whole idea. The whole operation just seemed to be like lights out, and I was so disappointed. But I think that's what happens when you actually start, and you're like, because it just isn't as perfect as it is in your head. And if you struggle with perfectionism like I do, I think that's normal. So here's me pushing through and just recording the dang thing for me. Like, I hope to meet a community here, and I really hope to connect with like other travelers who love history and books and like to budget and are creatives and like fashion and all these different things that I feel like I can connect with, with an audience. And so I need to give myself that chance, So I hope that's encouraging to you if you're also a creative. That I think is normal. I'm telling myself it's normal. So, but yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.